The stench hits you long before you reach the royal bedchamber. It is not the perfume of damask roses, nor the warm scent of beeswax and roasting venison often associated with Renaissance splendor. It is the unmistakable, suffocating reek of rotting flesh, sharp vinegar, and stale sweat trapped beneath heavy velvet tapestries. Imagine you are standing outside the Privy Chamber at Whitehall Palace on a damp morning in November 1544. You are holding your breath, your pulse hammering against your ribs. Inside lies a 53-year-old monarch, but he bears no resemblance to the golden prince painted by Hans Holbein. That athletic, charismatic jouster of 30 years ago is dead. In his place sits a monstrously bloated sovereign, weighing nearly 400 pounds, wrapped in furs and bandages, radiating pure, unpredictable menace. Pop culture remembers Henry VIII as a flamboyant tyrant who discarded wives like old clothes, but the daily reality of his final years was far darker. Whitehall was not a fairy tale palace. It was a high-stakes psychological pressure cooker, where a decaying king turned his entire kingdom into a mirror of his own physical agony. To survive a single day in his presence was an Olympic sport of political acrobatics. One wrong breath, one poorly chosen word, and you could find yourself transferred from the royal breakfast table to a stone cell in the Tower of London before dusk. Dawn breaks over the Thames, and the morning ordeal begins. It takes 4 burly gentlemen of the Privy Chamber just to hoist the king out of his bed. His waistline now exceeds 54 inches. Every single shift in weight sends searing, electric agony shooting up his legs. 8 years earlier, a catastrophic jousting accident crushed his lower limbs, leaving him with chronic, suppurating varicose ulcers that never fully healed. Watch closely as his surgeons approach. There are no sterile gloves, no antibiotics, no modern painkillers. The royal leg is purple, weeping and swollen to twice its natural size. To prevent gangrene from claiming the crown, the royal physicians must keep the wound open. They use red-hot branding irons and sharp probes to cauterize the necrotic tissue, followed by poultices of crushed earthworms, barley flour, and turpentine. Henry screams. The sound tears through the stone corridors, freezing every guard in his tracks. You can hear his fists slamming against the oak headboard. The men holding his limbs dare not flinch. If a surgeon hurts him too much, the king might accuse him of treason. If the surgeon hesitates and the ulcer closes, toxic pus accumulates inside the bone, triggering blinding fevers that turn Henry into a homicidal maniac. Once the weeping sores are bound in linen soaked in rose water and lead acetate, the dressing ritual begins. It is an engineering marvel. It takes an hour to wedge his massive frame into stiffened doublet and ermine robes, custom-tailored with slits and laces to accommodate his swollen joints. He cannot manage stairs anymore. Instead, carpenters have installed elaborate mechanical tackle systems, pulley-driven chairs, and wheeled sleds to hoist him between the levels of Whitehall. Think of Whitehall Palace not as a romantic seat of governance, but as the corporate headquarters of an unstable, nuclear-armed CEO. Over 1,000 people inhabit this sprawling complex of brick and timber, and every single one of them is watching the king's mood like traders watching a volatile stock market. By noon, the Great Hall prepares for dinner, but the atmosphere is icy. The court operates under a system of total surveillance. Henry's paranoia, amplified by constant migraines and cerebral trauma from his jousting concussions, has institutionalized fear. Informers linger behind every tapestry. The act of treasons has expanded to the point where even imagining the king's death, or criticizing his current marriage to Catherine Parr, is punishable by being hung, drawn, and quartered. Imagine walking past the council chamber carrying state papers. You have to navigate factions ready to destroy you to gain the king's favor. The conservative Catholics, led by Bishop Stephen Gardiner, and the reformist Protestants, backed by the Queen, are locked in a vicious proxy war. Henry intentionally pits them against each other, watching from his gilded chair like a spider in a web. He enjoys their terror. He thrives on the knowledge that the man who kneels before him as chancellor today could be kneeling before the executioner's axe next Tuesday. When the king finally eats, the consumption is grotesque. His cooks prepare endless processions of roasted swan, spiced mutton, baked lampreys, and sugared tarts. Henry shovels food into his mouth with his bare fingers, washing it down with gallons of spiced ale and sweet red wine. Gout flares in his hands. His temper flares with it. If a messenger delivers bad news from the military campaign in Boulogne, Henry might hurl a silver goblet directly at the messenger's skull. If an advisor hesitates, the royal roar shakes the rafters. By late afternoon, the silence returns, heavier and more dangerous than the noise. The pain returns with a vengeance as the temporary numbness from wine wears off. Henry retreats into the inner sanctum of his private rooms. The palace corridors grow cold. Courtiers whisper in corners, speaking in code, terrified of the shifting shadows. This is the psychological turning point of the Tudor twilight. Behind the gold thread and the diamond rings, Henry is utterly, profoundly alone. He has executed his closest friends, including Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell. He has murdered 2 of his wives. His body is betraying him hour by hour, breaking down into a putrid mass of failing organs and infected bone. The man who once declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England cannot even walk to the latrine without a team of servants lifting him on a velvet harness. His misery becomes the realm's policy. When Henry hurts, England bleeds. Taxes are raised to fund feudal wars just to prove he is still a conqueror. Religious dissidents are burned at Smithfield on Mondays, and papal loyalists are hanged on Tuesdays, all to satisfy the contradictory whims of a dying patriarch desperate to prove his absolute control over heaven and earth. As the candles burn down to their tallow stubs and midnight settles over London, the groans of the sovereign echo through the drafty galleries. Courtiers lie awake in their beds, praying he survives the night, yet secretly wishing for the end of the terror. We often gaze back at history through the polished lens of oil paintings, remembering crowns, majestic titles, and architectural triumphs. But the real past was written in the stench of pus, the creak of mechanical pulleys lifting broken bodies, and the quiet horror of human beings trapped in the orbit of an untouchable tyrant. The men and women who survived the Tudor court did not live in a golden age. They survived an unyielding nightmare in the shadows of a decaying throne. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark and visceral corners of history, hit subscribe and ring the bell to join us on Past Legacy. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know which hidden chapter of the past we should uncover next.